Good afternoon. It's Holy Thursday and it's 2 p.m. This meeting will come to order. First item on the agenda is roll call, and I see we have everyone with the exception of the treasurer. I don't know what her status is. I don't know if she's showing up for this meeting. We have the chair, Addison, who indicated she made an appointment over a month ago for this exact time, so she won't be here. She may join us at 3 p.m. according to a text I just got. And we won't have legal counsel. I spoke to him this morning and said we have no action items on the agenda, and it was not imperative that we spend the money to have legal counsel. Okay, we'll start off with public comment. I'll read the statement here. Speakers must state their name and community and speak for no more than 3 minutes. Persons addressing the board are expected to observe a level of civility and decorum appropriate for a public meeting. No personal attacks or disruptions for any audience members will be tolerated. And the first person I have for today is Suzanne Kearney.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Kearney and I live in Post Falls. Since the election, pushback against the new board majority has been relentless. Trustees Club and Hanley ran on a platform of transparency, fiscal responsibility, and protecting minors from sexually explicit materials, values which should be shared by everyone. Unfortunately, a small but vocal minority seems hell-bent on thwarting the will of the voters. Several months ago, former trustee McCree presented a letter implying that possible open meeting law violations may be litigated. Now a special meeting regarding open meeting laws has been called. Should we be concerned? As an outside community observer, here are some things I have seen. Lame duck trustees hired within days of the end of their term a new library director with a litigious past. Was this plan to block the new board from keeping campaign promises? New trustees are maligned in the news and opposition seemingly surveils their every move. Is this in hopes of finding fault and perhaps filing suit? I see a library director who has allegedly hired her own choice of law firm hours before the new board was set to vote on a different firm, accepted a raise within months of being hired in the midst of a budget crisis, hired a communications director whose media spin often seemed targeted against the efforts of the new trustees, questioned the trustees' ethical standards for efforts at transparency, such as requesting a list of materials purchases. Based on my observation, I must ask whether the director supports the board majority. Contrary to what some believe, she does work for the trustees inasmuch as they represent the taxpayers. If there's potential risk, we have an attorney to advise. Let him make judgments on whether the board's actions are objectionable. Our trustees also face outside resistance from the voting minority. Last week, the board majority were unjustly labeled racist. This is nothing but virtue signaling and identity politics, and the strife it intentionally foments merely the Hegelian dialectic applied. This is not about Juneteenth, it is about divide and conquer. Splitting our community into racial groups and slandering those who reject the Marxist narrative benefits no one. When the board majority is maligned, the real object of disdain is the voters they represent. My request to the board is that they, 1, put the Juneteenth issue to rest by swapping last week's vote with a floating holiday. 2, keep pursuing the will of the voting majority. And 3, refuse to renew the director's contract in 2025. My hope is that someday the board will have a director who's fully supportive and a community who seeks unity rather than division.
Thank you. The next speaker is Diane Van Heaton.
Hi, I'm Diane Bennett and I'm from Hayden. I have a visual aid. I promise not to read the whole thing. This is regarding Juneteenth, and the book is called Okalee and What It Means to Be Free, the True Story of the Grandmother of Juneteenth, and it is a true story. So there's a town, they're celebrating, and a bunch of kids gather under a tree, and she starts to tell them a story about Juneteenth. Once upon a blazing sun, black bodies were bought and sold like cattle. Black men plowed the fields, but were not allowed to own the land. Black women cooked the food, but were not allowed to feast on roast and ribs from the master's table. Black children cleaned the one-room schoolhouses, but were not allowed to read or write. Earning and learning were against the law. Slavery was a thief. American slavery dragged on like a plague until January 1st, 1863. That's when President Lincoln wielded courage and raised his feathered pen. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation with a mighty stroke. Glory, glory, freedom was dazzling news like a bright starry night. However, Texas was big and many, many miles away from Mr. Lincoln. White masters defied his words. Black bodies remained in bondage. They plowed, they cooked, they cleaned. Freedom did not ring through Texas in 1863. It was toiling times in the Lone Star State for 2 years, 5 months, and 18 more weary days. Then finally, joy jumped up on dancing feet in the Gulf town of Galveston. The year was 1865. The day was June 19th. Gordon Granger marched through Galveston with Union Army troops. The general raised his booming voice and spoke these righteous words. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. Singing filled the air. Happy tears rolled down like rain. Black families leaped through cotton fields and played tambourines. It was a day of jubilee, perfect for Texas barbecue, watermelon, and sweet potato pie. Delicious delights they had been denied during servitude. At the very end of the book, it talks about Opal Lee, the grandmother of Juneteenth. Opal led a movement to make Juneteenth a national holiday. From 2016 to 2020, she walked across America and collected more than 1.5 million signatures for her petition to the U.S. Congress. It was a journey complete with rejection and disappointments. Nothing stopped her. Opal continued her walk, and when she was 94 years old, President Joe Biden signed legislation to make Juneteenth a national holiday, commemorating the end of American slavery. Opal Lee's constant reminder is wise advice. None of us are free until we're all free, and we aren't free yet. I think that Juneteenth is very much equally as important as Independence Day, since when
Please wrap it up.
absolutely, when the 4th of July, when the Declaration of Independence was signed, it did not apply to Americans of color.
Okay, thank you.
And I implore you to change your vote.
The next speaker is Teresa Burkett.
Good afternoon. My name is Teresa and I live in Post Falls, and I'm a mother and a grandmother. I understand that there was an open meeting violation in the March 6th Board of Trustees meeting. If this is true, this board has a legal obligation to correct the mistake. However, I do not believe this is the first time. When a trustee delivers a lengthy speech and presents a typed out motion about a policy, it indicates a predetermined decision with minimal discussion. Similarly, when a policy is allocated only 10 minutes for discussion on the agenda, it suggests a predetermined outcome. It is time to cure all violations. I, along with many community members, are appalled by the holiday policy approved by this board, which removes Juneteenth. Director Eccles and Assistant Director Lindsay mentioned that part-time employees will suffer due to 3 holidays in November without pay. The lack of empathy from this board is shocking, especially given the current hateful climate in our community. I am sure the board is aware of the recent events in the CDA. Removing a holiday that celebrates a significant moment in our history does not send a positive message to our community. You should strive to be better. I will once again demand a refund of taxes for legal services that have been paid for by taxpayers but have not provided any benefit. I find it unfair that some individuals can earn $2.75 an hour without providing a service. Finally, I have noticed that the board has not publicly thanked Lake CDA movers for providing complimentary services to the Post Falls and Apple libraries. I want to take this opportunity to express our gratitude. Lake CDA movers, your generous donation has not gone unnoticed. The community truly values your kind and sincere support. And remember, you work for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Summer Bushnell.
I had sent you guys a recent email, so I just wanted to kind of expound on that. And I want to say I appreciate you guys when I have a public records request. or I email you guys. You guys are really great about getting back to me. Other government entities take the required 5 to 10 days. I also wanted to comment on Juneteenth. Before I moved to Idaho in 2007, I lived in Texas. Juneteenth is a fairly big deal there. I'm not originally from Texas, but I had to learn what that was and learned about it. And it is very historically significant for that state. I wasn't paying attention when it became a more national holiday. I actually disagree with other commenters. I agree with the recent vote to change it to not be a paid day off. I personally think that that should be what another commenter said, a floating holiday, to give another paid day off, and maybe if that's possible, give flexibility to when that employee takes it off, like 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or just have it be, you know, they want an extra day off around Easter. Great. So once again, I appreciate you all, even when I don't agree with you. I appreciate you guys, and thank you so much.
Okay, that was the last speaker since we didn't use any time. Is there any late arrivals that want to speak?
Hello, I'm a late arrival.
I'm sorry, can you give that name one more time?
My name is Dallas J. Graves.
And where do you live?
I live in the Silver Valley. My name is Dallas J. Graves, and I am both an employee and patron of the Community Library Network and resident of the Silver Valley. I've been overwhelmed with gratitude to work in a field that serves the public while also being surrounded by knowledgeable and empathetic colleagues. My decision to speak today is in regard to the 3 board members who upheld the decision to amend the Personnel Policy 5.3.6. Considering the urgency of the crises that CLN faces, this action is both short-sighted and superficial. If the genuine motivation behind removing Juneteenth from the holiday policy is budget-oriented, perhaps financial accountability could be found in the $8,000 monthly expenditure on legal counsel, whose advice and even presence is consistently disregarded by you. Abruptly revoking a holiday that over 100 staff members have anticipated for months without any input or collaboration from those affected staff whatsoever is irresponsible and disrespectful. I urge you to actually ask all staff affected by this and then make a decision based on that input. I represent at least one staff member that vehemently disagrees with this decision. Also, what was the purpose of changing President's Day to only Washington's birthday? That removes the recognition of President Lincoln, who worked to abolish slavery in the United States. This, coupled with the brazen disposal of Juneteenth, looks terrible. It is at best tactless. You can claim it has nothing to do with racism, but it isn't enough to deny racism on your part. You are complacent to and enable racism if you are not working to be actively anti-racist, as well as courteous, conscientious, and receptive to the criticisms given to you by the public that you work for. Furthermore, I am initiating a call to action to all my fellow employees of CLN. Let's stand in solidarity, if any of you are here, and as was originally planned, remain absent, ensuring the appropriate closure of all CLN libraries on June 19th. Additionally, I encourage all of my colleagues to intentionally take time on that day to commemorate the end of slavery in the United States of America. And although she is not here, let it be on record, finally, to the chair, I would like to say, for her manipulative tactics, egregious disregard for the concerns of the public, the director, and your fellow trustees, as well as her blatant hypocrisy, I hope she has repented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the public, sorry, my phone's ringing. Public comment portion of the agenda. Yeah, is there another speaker? No, we're still within 30 minutes. I wouldn't mind, yes.
Hello, my name is Linda Putz, and I'm from Hayden. And I think I can safely say I'm probably the only minority in this room, which is somewhat reflective of our community. Never once have I ever been discriminated against, unfortunately, except for certain people who like to call me a white supremacist because I believe in American values and I'm a patriot. When I heard this whole thing about this whole June 19th, I think you have to take into consideration who is most affected by it. We don't live in a community that has a lot of minorities. That's just the fact of it. That's just the fact of it. And I think me as a family, I would love to have the day after Thanksgiving off and have a 4-day weekend. But I think the idea of a floating holiday is fabulous. So those who want to celebrate June 19th are more than welcome to celebrate June 19th. But I think imposing a holiday that is not representative of our community is unfair, and calling the board and those who support changing that day is truly, truly pathetic. Thank you.
Last call for public comment. Hearing none, we'll move on. Just let you know, typically I spend a lot of time preparing for these meetings, and I've been battling a really miserable cold for the last 3 days. And I'm hyped up on lots of, whatever they call it, Benadryl, so probably more than is recommended. Go on to the next item on the agenda, that is a discussion and review, training on open meeting law. Let me see what I have in my notes here. Okay, and as I don't see any time slots allotted to the agenda number 4 and 5, unless there's objection, I'd like to allot 40 to 45 minutes for each. Does anybody object on the board to that? All right, hearing none, that's what we'll do. So I don't know who wants to speak first on that. Trustee Blank?
Thank you. Thanks for stepping in today. So I asked for this to be on the agenda because of the letter that we received from Regina McCree, who's very knowledgeable about library law and very knowledgeable about the open meeting law and how that applies to libraries. I asked for it to be on the agenda and it was denied. And it was characterized as, by the board chair, as the letter was characterized as blowing smoke, which I thought was very disrespectful to a letter of public comment from a patron. I think it's really important that we are conscientious, as somebody said, and listen to people when they choose to speak, especially somebody as knowledgeable as Ms. McCree is about these things. I'm really concerned that we may have issues concerning the open meeting law. And I think that it's really important that we have a discussion about it. We have not had any kind of educational opportunity to discuss the open meeting law, and yet since I've been on this board for a long time and have had directors who were just absolutely very, very tyrannical concerning the open meeting law. And so I know a lot about it, and we have, in my opinion, violated the open meeting law many times. And I think it's time we learn about what it is. To that end, at the end of the meeting, last time when since I wouldn't go on the agenda, then I requested a special meeting for it because I think our board needs to learn. And I went directly up to our attorney and I said, it's very important that you attend. And I am very disappointed that our attorney chose not to attend today because what we need is some real understanding of this law. And that's what I'm hoping we can do. I'm really glad that our director's here because that is one of the things that directors are expected to do, is to know the law, the statutes concerning a library. And I know that our director does. And so we don't look to her as we should for what laws we may be violating. So that's an opening statement that I have. And I have the open meeting law. My suggestion is that we go through it, and I have it in front of me and I have a bunch of questions on it, but there may be others who'd like to speak before that.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything? I don't know who's going to run the training, actually. That was one of the reasons why I contacted legal counsel this morning. I asked if he's giving it. He said no. I said, okay, then I don't see a need. So he didn't not show because he didn't want to. I told him he didn't need to be here. We had no action items on the agenda, so it was not legal counsel backing out. There are the comments, and I don't know who's giving the training on this, or he's going to go through the, yes, Tracker.
I would just recommend that the board put legal counsel on an agenda to discuss. Generally speaking, legal counsel has been invited and attended every meeting since he took over. And a singular trustee does not have any authority. And so by asking the legal counsel to not come to this meeting, I think that may be a topic that the rest of the board would benefit from discussing at further length. I know there's been some comments about the expense of legal counsel and creating those criteria, but I think, again, it's the majority of the board that makes that determination, not a singular trustee, not the chair, not an acting or a vice chair. It really is the majority. My understanding was that this was going to include legal counsel. Trustee Blank mentioned it in the meeting that she wanted him to come. And so I think that is a little bit interesting, I guess is the word, that you took that initiative to uninvite him. So I'm happy to answer the questions that I know the answers to. There may be some that we need to refer to legal counsel and have him give an opinion on.
Okay, and if there's discussions on when legal counsel should be here or not be here, that might be a topic of discussion for another agenda, because I have no idea at this time what the arrangement was, who tells legal counsel when they should or should not be here. So we can say that unless there's a quick answer on that. I don't want to get off topic. This is not an item on the agenda.
Well, I would just point out that legal counsel has been here single meeting unless he's had a specific conflict with court or something like that. So this is the first time that these two trustees have called a meeting, and this is the first time that legal counsel has been uninvited.
Trustee Robinson.
I literally feel faint right now. I am in disbelief that he was told not to come. He is at every meeting and he is either does not take initiative to speak up or he's told not to speak. And now, when clearly we were having a meeting about open meeting laws, and the attorney isn't here and was told not to be here, I'm beside myself and literally feel faint. So who's supposed to run this meeting? Well,
I'm running the meeting.
we've got the vice chair. Are you qualified to take us through this book? I can't believe that he is not here.
Thank you. There was nothing in the agenda that said who was providing the training, so that's the answer I have there. Trustee Plus?
Well, I frankly, looking at the agenda, I would agree that the legal counsel wouldn't need to be here. There's no action items except for adjournment. That's the reason he needs to be here. Before we take action, if we're doing something that's illegal, something that is clearly going to get us in trouble, that's why he's here, to tell us not to take that action or go to executive session or postpone or something. And so I don't see the need for him to be here, especially when no one asked him to give the instruction. So I'm not.
Somebody did.
The least
Somebody
bit-
did.
I'm well, if he says he wasn't asked, anyway, I think it's perfectly fine that he's not here.
Director?
I was just going to offer, perhaps we could take a brief recess and I can contact Mr. Boyles and see if he's available to join us via video call. Again, I think when you're discussing training of the law, the most appropriate person would be legal counsel. And again, when this board first began in June of last year, the very first topic was training by legal counsel. We have been clear that we provide this board training by legal counsel when it comes to interpretation of the law. It is not appropriate for me to interpret the law. It is not appropriate for any of us to interpret the law except for legal counsel on behalf of the public. So I would recommend a brief recess and an attempt to reach Mr. Boyles and see if he can join us via video conference.
I disagree. Trustee Robinson, please.
I kind of lost my thought.
Yeah,
I would-
Go ahead.
I would, if Mr. Boyles can attend this meeting, that'd be great. I question if he would be prepared for it, if he was not even planning on coming. But this board has, on several occasions, publicly said they do not want any training. They're not interested in any training. We know enough. It's a new board. We don't care what the laws are. And now this happens where it's blatant. We're supposed to discuss, review training on open meeting law and our lawyer's not here. It's been said many times in public meetings that people are not interested in learning how to be a proper board member. And it's evident with our agendas that it's not being run properly.
This special meeting was called either by two trustees or by the library director. That's why we're here. And it was up to them to decide who was providing training, I suppose. It wasn't my job. So either we just run through the book and do our own training, or someone can take the lead on it. And I'm recognizing trustee Blank, yes.
I did ask the legal counsel to be here after the meeting. I went up to him directly and I said, we need you to be here to provide that information. So, and he looked at me and shook his head. No, I don't have any. I was right over there. Nope, that was in Hayden. I don't have any proof, so to speak, with that. And perhaps it was incorrect for one person to do it, but since I was one of the people that had called the meeting, it didn't occur to me that legal counsel wouldn't be here for that. We can go over the questions. If I would very much ask him, like to ask him to attend. But I will also go over the questions that I think are very, very important that we begin to look at and understand that I think that we keep stumbling over and that may be cause for us to be violating the law.
Trustee Plus?
Well, I want to clarify the first meeting when we were sworn in. At the time, legal counsel gave the new trustees especially instruction on open meeting. We probably spent 25 minutes on it, but she went through all of the main things about how to do emails, all the don't talk to each other, it was all, we did get training. So it isn't that we've never had training. We had all the main highlights and we have been told over and over, don't email reply to all, because then you might be conducting business. We can only reply to the director and the director then sends it out. So I think we've had a lot of instruction on it. Again, I just clarify that there is no need for us to pay for a lawyer to be here if there's no action items, unless he was specifically asked to come give some instruction and we're going to pay for it. He should be here when we're doing action items to advise us if we're doing something illegal or if we're doing something that is in violation of open meeting or something. But we're not doing any action items, so I don't see the need.
We need two hands up at the same time, trustee Blank.
Did you go ahead?
I was just going to respond.
I'll say, go ahead.
That I overheard trustee Blank at the last meeting ask Mr. Boyles to attend. And then I would just also point out that Mr. Boyles did not communicate with me that he would not be attending. So while he may have communicated with one person, he did not communicate. We set up a table and a spot for him. It was my understanding up until the meeting started that he would be here today. So I just want my notation that it confirms that I overheard trustee Blank ask for his attendance.
Very good. Well, it seems to me that trustee Blank has no more or less authority to ask legal counsel to be here or not be here. So I asked him, I didn't ask him to stay away. I told him he didn't need to be here if he didn't want to be. He said, fine, he has things to do. And that was that. And next time we'll have to have a discussion of when legal counsel is or is not expected to be here. Trustee Blank?
Well, I can wait for the director.
I was just going to restate or correct my statement that I overheard trustee Blank state that she wanted him to be here and to talk about open meeting law. And I have also seen some correspondence between other trustees and council as well.
Okay, we need to move along and actually
I
do something on training or discussions in general. I'm not going to stay focused on attorney presence or non-presence.
I'm sorry.
Trustee Blank, go ahead.
Yeah, I am going to say that it is not the determination of one trustee why a legal counsel should be here or not. It is not, there is no place in any contract or any place that it says that legal counsel needs to be here only when there are action items. We've had plenty of training by attorneys, by our attorney for something like this. And this is very appropriate because we have been told by an attorney that we may be violating open meeting law, and to be able to discuss the open meeting law in a public meeting would be valuable with the attorney. To that end, we could talk about the questions that have come up because of the letter and because of going through the open meeting law. If, which was what I I wanted to do that with the attorney here.
We're going to make sure that this is not going to be an inquiry into any alleged actions in the past. If it's training, that's fine. If it's discussion about open meeting law, that's fine. We're not going to go through point by point on someone's accusations. Trustee Plas, go ahead.
So I thought it was pretty clear in the last meeting that if there were specific allegations and the attorney addressed it, he says, send me an email or send me a notice of the allegation and he'll review it and tell you. So I am under the impression no one has filed any allegation of open meeting violation or you would know about it. But if we're going to talk about that, I think it's not something for the public at this point to go through and read Ms. McCrae's letter and explain what she said. Please file the accusation or the complaint to the attorney so he can respond. That's what he said he would do, and apparently no one's done that. But if you want to talk about open meeting violations, don't quote the letter, but go to the section of the open meeting book that we all have and tell us which sections we seem to, the board seems to be weak on our performance. Talk about the sections and I'll listen to that, but I think it's completely inappropriate to read a letter that hasn't even been decided on by the attorney or even had the attorney requested to give a ruling on.
My 5 minutes about meeting discussion on the phone with counsel today. Nothing's been filed. Trustee Robin, go ahead.
So at last meeting, I did bring up a possible violation. I wasn't even at that meeting, so I brought that up and that's when I was told to stop talking about it. And the attorney did use his voice and told me if I had specific questions to ask him about that over email. At the end of that last meeting, when we knew there was going to be a special meeting for open meeting laws, I did send counsel an email stating to him, I won't give you my questions right now because we're having this meeting, obviously assuming that he would be here. So I guess my bad for thinking he was actually going to be at a meeting for training. But we need, whatever we do at this meeting today, we have to, whether it's pointing fingers at the past or not, we need to go through this book where certain trustees have concerns, at least talk about that since we're here.
Okay, Trustee Blank has some kind of suggestion to go through.
Okay.
We're not going to address accusations at this meeting.
I am gonna start with my questions concerning the open meeting law. And I'm gonna read from the manual. The Idaho open meeting law was designed to ensure transparency of the legislative and
Can you give us a page,
administrative.
please?
This is page 1 of the manual. It's the very first sentence. And these are the questions that they have, and then they have the law itself in the back. Let me say again, this law was designed to ensure transparency of the legislative and administrative processes within the state and local government. The legislature articulated this policy in the Act's first section. The people of the state of Idaho, in creating the instruments of government that serve them, do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies so created. Therefore, the legislature finds and declares that it is a policy of this state that the formation of public policy is public business and shall not be conducted in secret. I think that that's really important to remember in the light of things that have been said recently concerning specific policies, that we want to talk about them in executive session. We want to talk about them quietly. It is important to remember not just what the words say in the law, but the intent of the law. And these are the kinds of questions I would have asked the attorney. The intent of the law is transparency. So the more that we can act in front of the public, the more transparent we are. On page 2, it says what public bodies or agencies are subject to the open meeting law. And that all meetings of a governing body of a governing agency shall be open to the public and all persons shall be permitted to attend. I'd also like to, because this is going to come up with another question. I would also like, in this question number 1 on page 2, it defines governing body. It talks about governing body. And in the law itself, on page 24 of the Idaho open meeting law, governing body is defined. It means the members of any public agency that consist of 2 or more members with the authority to make decisions for or recommendations to a public agency regarding any matter. So I had a question concerning governing bodies, and that question was if there is a 2/3 vote that is required, and we'll talk about this when we come up to executive session, but if there's a 2/3 vote and it talks about a 2/3 vote required of the governing body, does that mean that it's just the members present? It doesn't say members present. If it doesn't say members present, then the governing body, what does that mean? So that was a question I would have asked the attorney to address. What does it mean by the word governing body? I don't even know I don't know if the director would know the answer to that. No.
Go ahead.
Council has mentioned that to me, that at one of our meetings, he had that question. And he recommended that we not go into executive session with someone absent, or without 4 votes. And so he would be the best person to interpret that.
Okay, so that's going to be important when we come up to executive session.
Okay, just curious, did you wish to continue going through the book, trustee Blank? I said the question over here with trustee Plossman.
No, that's fine.
You
I mean,
can keep it if you want to go through things. I'm not going to stop your training.
That is, I'm not giving a training. I'm sharing the questions. So that's one of my first questions.
Okay, trustee Ploss?
I think this has been answered in the past. This is a general statement, consists of 2 or more members with the authority to make decisions. So it's however many has the authority to make decisions. So in the case of, was it right where she was, page 24, item 5 on the top, definition of governing body. In the case of county commissioners, they've got 3 for probably, except for this alternate form of government. I don't know how many counties have gone to that with 5. And that was part of the motivation for the county commissioners this last time to try to do that. So if 2 of them were talking to each other, they weren't violating open meeting law. If they had 5, 2 of them could talk to each other. So that's where the 2 comes from, as I believe, is county commissioners that only have 3. They're always in violation of open meeting law if they talk about anything, just 2 of them. But that's not the case for us, where we have members of 5, or we have 5 members. The governing authority is 3 in this case. So they should have maybe worded that a little better, but they did say or more with authority to make decisions. So I think clearly they're saying as few as 2 for county commissioners that have 3 or more if there's more members, but it's the authority to make decisions. So for our case, it's 3. And I guess I'd like to hear legal counsel explain that, or talk directly to the state for a definition on that. But I think that's pretty clear.
Okay, it's all hands up at the same time, trustee Robinson. And then it'll be the director next.
I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
What do you?
I do, but
I didn't, sorry.
I don't think that there's anybody sitting here who's an attorney. And so trying to define or talk about it, I'm raising the questions that I would like our legal counsel to answer. But us trying to make a decision without our legal counsel is exactly the reason we need our legal. I mean, unless we're attorneys, and even an attorney on the board is not the same as a our legal counsel. So things that trustees say that they think it's what it means, we need to check with legal counsel to make sure.
Director?
I would just say as a best practice and to avoid the appearance, which might be inappropriate, the best practice is really not to talk to other trustees outside of public meetings about business that is in front of the board. So whether or not it's a literal violation or an appearance violation, you should not be having conversations. Those comments, those questions, those understandings should all be done in front of the public business. It is public business. And so I think the question that I would bring to council and really want him to explain, because I think there's been some lack of clarity, is that I've heard sort of a board business and we should do this in executive session and not with the public. And then so much is public business. And I would redirect the board back to the very first page that ends that when in doubt, it's an open meeting, open the meeting. So again, when in doubt, don't talk to other trustees about items on our agendas. And when in doubt, talk about it in public unless your legal counsel has said there's an imminent threat of litigation or you're negotiating for real estate. Very specific reasons that he's telling you that you have that right to go into private to discuss that.
Trustee Robinson?
So I know that it's been discussed on many occasions when and how we should receive information from our attorney. Some people have said they want it in executive meetings only. Some say they want it written only, no verbal. So I do believe that our attorney, Mr. Boyles, has been asked to research that of what his role would be in deciding if it's okay for him to give the board all or most of their information from him in executive sessions. Director, let me know if he's ever given any kind of answer on that. I think it's been a few months where he's been asked to. Do we have any kind of report from him on what he thinks his appropriate role is when giving legal advice to the board in private sessions, written only? And again, if it was written, then it still could have a FOIA on it. So I guess bare bones question, has Mr. Boyles gotten back to the director or a board member on his opinion on that?
Correct.
We have not received anything from our current counsel. I'll speak a little bit more generally. Legal counsel typically gives the board the heads up that something that he's corresponding with us is protected under attorney-client privilege. So most commonly, you'll see right in the subject line or at the bottom, confidential or attorney-client privilege. That would be information that he has determined may or may not be public, but you should not give it to your friends or your neighbors or talk about it. That should be held confidential. So I would say that would be a good indicator if he's made that determination. I will say that I have sent some correspondence and the whole board may not see this. It's usually between the chair and legal counsel and I about if a topic, if it qualifies for an executive session. So recently we had on our agenda a topic related to insurance. And it was a topic that I wasn't clear what direction it was going to go into. If it was going to go into the direction of ICRIM and an appeal, and if we're going to dispute a claim, those types of very, specific conversations would likely fall under the protection of executive session. And so usually counsel and I talk about, and we like to put it on the agenda if it meets the criteria, so that the board has that opportunity. So counsel really is the one that is driving those determinations and making those decisions for this board of whether or not it qualifies. I will say in this case, I sent 2 or 3 emails and he did not respond. And so I was required to post the agenda. In my best judgment, it did have an executive session. We didn't go into executive session, and that kind of explains what happened at that last meeting. But generally speaking, I rely on counsel. The phrase imminent litigation, again, that's a legal phrase that's interpreted by counsel of whether or not he feels if we've received correspondence, if it meets that criteria, or whether, so we received some correspondence a while back from organizations that talked about litigation. And so clearly I could see that met the criteria. Other times it's less clear, like we've received a letter from a lawyer, but in my opinion, it doesn't threaten litigation. It's just an awareness type of informational is what my interpretation of that was. And so again, that would be legal counsel determine if that it was from a lawyer, but it didn't have a threat or a specific action, or, you know what I'm saying? Those types of very judgment-based decisions are really those made by your legal counsel.
Sure.
Okay, I think we're bouncing around, not ignoring the director's comments here. We're bouncing around a lot and we have no training. And I would suggest next time someone puts training on the agenda, they identify who's providing the training and set it up. So we don't come in here and spend 40 minutes on non-training. Trustee Plas, go ahead.
I was gonna clarify because I'm the one, I think I'm the one, or maybe others have joined in, but I've asked that legal counsel give us his advice in writing or an executive session, because maybe not imminent lawsuit or legal action, but it's a public record. What he says, if he says, I advise you to do X, Y, Z because it's the safest thing, and then we do ABC instead, we're the trustees, we're the ones that make the decision. But now it's on record that he advised to do X, Y, Z because it's the safest. I don't think we should have to have it on public record what his advice was when it could very easily affect a policy that will be legal action taken against us. He can give his advice and say, to be the safest, you can do this, but there's courts that are looking like they're saying this, and he can say it. We make the decision ultimately, and it's not a matter of us doing something illegal. One court may say, the first court may say that this is wrong, and then we appeal it, and the next court says it's right. This is happening all over the country with this stuff. So it's not a matter of us doing something illegal. I just don't want public record of him saying certain things are the safest and we don't do that. I think that should be in writing. It should be an executive session. It is ultimately, litigation material. And once it's on record, the, opposition can go, get the records and see, and try to prove that we did something reckless.
Yeah, I'll have one comment. There are some very specific situations that require or don't require executive sessions that allow it, on page 20 and 38. Beyond that, I guess it's between the board and council when he thinks it's appropriate to go to executive session. Trustee Blunt?
I think it's very clear, when we go into executive session, and I don't think it's a choice. I don't think, oh, today we'll go into executive session for this, but not that. I think the list is very, very clear. When a trustee says that they don't want something on public record, something that is not covered by an executive session, then I don't understand how that is being transparent. That seems to be asking for non-transparency. The point of an elected official, and that this is the job is that we do it in public. That's the point of this law. And for deciding that we don't want this on public record, if you don't want it on public record, then it should not be said. But there are plenty of things that have to be said in an open meeting, because there's only a few reasons that we go into a closed meeting. And it's not a choice. It is, we do it by law, and that is why we needed our legal counsel here today. I am going through the book, and some of the things I am looking at, what the concerns that were presented by this letter. And one of the things that is of concern, in this letter, is our advisory committees, boards, and commissions subject to the open meeting law. This is page 4 in the manual. It's a question. And it, in the answer, a little bit down, it says, thus advisory committees, boards, and commissions are subject to the open meeting law if the body is created by or pursuant to statute, which we are. In contrast, a governing body is any body with the authority to make decisions or recommendations to a public agency regarding a matter. And so I would say that two trustees talking they have the ability to make a recommendation. On the next page, on page 6, it talks about what constitutes the open meeting law defines meeting to mean the convening of a governing body of a public agency to make a decision or to deliberate toward a decision on any matter. And the term deliberation is also a defined term, and it means the receipt or exchange of information or opinion relating to a decision, but shall not include informal or impromptu discussions. So the deal here is that if two trustees are meeting, either make a recommendation or to deliberate on something, that meeting is required to be noticed to the public, and it is required to be in public. And that is one of the concerns that was addressed in this letter is, are we doing that?
We're not addressing the letter.
I am addressing the letter.
Well, you're
I'm
not-
sorry.
no.
Sorry. I apologize.
Override, you're not going to
I'm sorry.
cover
I said
accusations in this meeting.
I didn't do
I'm
accusations.
chairing the meeting. You're out of order, Trustee Blank.
I am not.
You're out
I
of
am-
order. Do
Sure.
not
I
bring
am-
up accusations.
I am highlighting
Sure.
the concerns I had in the letter.
Trustee Blank, you're out of order. Do not bring up accusations.
I
There
feel
was
that
no
you are,
accu-
I'm not bringing up accusations. I am
Do
bringing up
not bring
topics.
materials into the meeting about outside accusations that have not been founded yet. Legal counsel can tell us.
What
we have-
accusation did I make?
You're telling us stuff about a letter coming in.
I was saying the letter highlighted my concerns, and these are my concerns.
State your
That-
concerns, that's
I
okay.
just-
Don't be referencing the letter.
I just did. I got these concerns because of a concern that was addressed to this public entity. And
Sure.
that is why, I have concern, I am not done. We called this public meeting. Two trustees did. My concern was when we called this meeting, then to put together an agenda, which requires some deliberation. To put together, it requires.
Okay, your time is out for this particular
I'm
item,
sorry.
according to the clock.
I'm not done.
You
There's
need to
no
wrap it
time
up.
limit on
We
here.
allotted, I allotted 40 minutes with no objection from the board when the meeting started. You want to wrap it up in 1 minute, trustee Blank, go ahead, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda.
Yes, I'm concerned. We tried to be squeaky clean about this because I'm concerned about the things that are highlighted that we are as a board inappropriately meeting.
Sure.
Thank you. Short comment, otherwise we need to move
Very
on.
quick, setting an agenda, and obviously the director requires that two trustees for a special meeting have the same agenda and agree, because it's been rejected. I'm sorry, this is confusing. You're both saying different things. So when one trustee says this is the agenda and the second trustee says, I agree with it, we are not deliberating, we're setting the agenda, we're following our bylaws. The bylaws say two trustees must agree on an agenda and request the meeting. So that is not a violation. That's just simply complying with bylaws.
The director would like to make one comment, and then we're moving on after that.
To just point out again, in that situation, I sent that to legal counsel. So again, legal counsel plays a very important role in this board remaining compliant with the open meeting law.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 5, discussion on personnel policy 5.3.6 holiday. Who would like to speak first on that subject? Trustee Blank?
I'd like to say that this was put on the agenda because we had a limited debate was cut off on this, or discussion was cut off on this. And I very much wanted to hear what staff had to say concerning the response, and they were cut off. And that's what part of this is about.
Director?
I included in your packet some information, and with your permission, I'll just go through this. The revised holidays does have the inclusion of the date of the revision and the approval, so that item is in red to bring to your attention. Additionally, I did send out a memo with Lindsay as well. It's an updated comparison of holidays in the area. This was brought to the board last year, and I know since there are 2 new trustees, they probably have not had this information, and so it's been updated. Essentially, it reflects that only the Coeur d'Alene Library does not recognize Juneteenth, and it goes through and documents Meridian Library celebrates Juneteenth and the Friday after Thanksgiving. They have 12 holidays. Lake Talk County Library District recognizes Juneteenth and they have 12 holidays. East Bonner Library recognizes Juneteenth and does not recognize the Friday after Thanksgiving. They have 12 holidays. Missoula Public Library recognizes Juneteenth and the Friday after Thanksgiving. They have 14 holidays. Liberty Lake recognizes Juneteenth and the Friday after Thanksgiving. They have 12 holidays, and Spokane Public Library recognizes Juneteenth and does not recognize the Friday after Thanksgiving. So in summary, there's only one library, the Coeur d'Alene Library, that does not recognize Juneteenth. Additionally, the next handout you have is a summary. I was able to get some perspective from staff that I think is valuable. I asked them in a day and a half to respond to a 5-question survey, and the results are summarized here. So the first question was, do you believe the change in holidays from Juneteenth to after Thanksgiving will affect library service and the public? 69% responded yes. Do you believe the change in holidays from Juneteenth to the day after Thanksgiving will affect staff? That went up to 81%. How important do you feel it is to celebrate Juneteenth? you and or the organization that received a 4 out of 5 maximum as very important. How important do you feel it is to celebrate the day after Thanksgiving to you and or the organization, with 1 being not very important with a rating of 1.7? So full comments are attached, but I did summarize kind of an executive summary for you. I would characterize the comments largely being categorized as relating to the holiday, the fiscal year, and the effect on staff. And I'll highlight just a few of these. A lot of comments related to the day after Thanksgiving is not a holiday, and Juneteenth is a state and federal holiday. Could there be an option to add a holiday instead of switching them around? So some libraries have more holidays, so add a holiday. And not everyone needs to travel for Thanksgiving, so it may not be necessary to shut down libraries in addition, an additional day to the holiday. 1 comment, keep the policy simple, straightforward, and consistent with other state, local, and federal government entities. Moving on to kind of fiscal year, there was some lack of clarity about whether it would affect the Juneteenth that's in 3 months of this year. It was approved as part of the budget and calendar. If there are changes to the holiday schedule, it seems like, in their opinion, it should be done for the next fiscal year. Additionally, and this is something that I might mention to council, the 2 holidays occur in different fiscal years. So Juneteenth appears in fiscal year 2024, and the day after Thanksgiving is in fiscal year 2025 for us. So if we do not have a paid holiday in 2024, then staff are losing a paid holiday that was already agreed to for the year. So that is a negative consequence to staff that they're losing that. The effect on staff, and this is where I'm not sure that I felt personally that the board really listened to me or other staff and put adequate weight and giving us time to comment on this. But the impact on part-time staff should have been weighed heavier. If it is a holiday, staff should have a paid day off. This is a hardship for part-time staff right now before the holidays when things are tough. And replacing a paid federal holiday with an unpaid day off is not an equal exchange. And with a 2-day closure, additional staff are needed to work the weekend following the closure because of the influx of book returns. I would also personally add that when we budget for a holiday, we pay about 30 staff the holiday. So being open for Juneteenth actually does have a budgetary impact where we will be paying more for staff wages for that day.
Well, you don't need it.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. You can settle it, yeah.
Or you can do it either
We
way.
can switch it around. Trustee Foss, go ahead. And
So,
we'll switch chairs shortly.
Yeah.
Not physical chairs.
I wanted to just point out that, just for clarification for the audience, President's Day is still called President's Day. It's not called Washington's Day. So we didn't change that, and that's in the policy here. I think there was some confusion. I appreciate you going to the effort of asking, Director asking the staff. And I would interpret the first 2 questions of, will it affect service to the public? Will it affect the staff? And I would say, of course it does, because it's different days. So I'm not alarmed by those 2. It's going to affect this public and staff. I think it's pretty clear that we have to have this be on a fiscal year. So Juneteenth has to be honored this year because it's in the budget and we can't take that day away when they didn't get Thanksgiving last year or last Thanksgiving of 23. So that would be my opinion. And I think it's just, we have no choice but to make it be on the fiscal year. So that's what I would say on that, but I think those are my comments.
Trustee Robinson.
Welcome.
So first I'll say that if this would have been done in a more normal manner, we could have had this discussion. We would have heard about the fiscal year concerns, and it wouldn't just be rammed through with no discussion. So that's an interesting point. I personally don't see this as a racist motivation for the board. I don't see it that way. I know a lot of people out there do, but I don't. For years, what was it? Arizona didn't have Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I never took that as that state's racist. Another thing about the Friday after Thanksgiving, even some of the members of the board had mentioned when they were employed, they had that Friday off and it was great having a 4-day weekend. Well, another thing that might have come up if we actually discussed this is the libraries are open on Saturday. So you give them a Friday off, it doesn't give them a 4-day weekend like a school teacher or a student. And then I'm confused with the, it's been mentioned a couple times, I think one of the comments from an employee and maybe the director, maybe, that you're replacing a paid with an unpaid. And I'm not, or a paid holiday with an unpaid holiday. I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking about and you can answer that, or somebody can answer that, because I was under the impression that Juneteenth, the non-full-time employees, would they get paid for Juneteenth being a holiday? Is that
Before the director responds, are you finished?
well,
No,
no,
I'm just transferring the chair position over, if that's okay. I believe the chair arrived around 3 or 3:01 for the record, and I'll hand off the chair position to trustee Hudson.
so I needed that answered before I went on.
So I mentioned that we have about 30 staff. And remember, we have over 100 total staff. So the only staff that are paid at all
Or any of the holidays. Okay.
is those 30 staff that are full-time and eligible.
Okay, so the term a paid holiday for an unpaid holiday really isn't correct.
I'm not quite sure how they meant it, but Juneteenth is still a holiday. And what it means is that we would open up that day and we would be open for business, open for library service. So you're going from a paid holiday to now, you know, it's still a holiday. It's still a federal and state holiday, but an unpaid working holiday.
Okay, so it's all that one day. Okay, thank you.
Further discussion?
Yes. Further discussion? Mr. Robinson?
I guess we need to discuss further because now it's been brought up by a trustee that it's not going to happen this year. So if it stands and the board is taking away Juneteenth, is it now not until 2025?
Director?
Sure. I would just bring you back to this document that you had. It was revised and approved, and so it would be effective this year, starting now, is how I would interpret the board's action. So if there was a change, this is not a meeting with an action item, but I would recommend that it come back on an agenda with an action item to make that modification. I would recommend that we make that modification or we talk to legal counsel. I have concerns about there are now financial implications for staff. And so I think that should be given some deliberation.
Trustee Robinson?
In that case, could somebody make a motion right now to put this, no motions?
Okay.
Okay. Obviously, it's been brought up, though, that it's possibly not a good idea to have it taken off of this year's calendar. So is it just going to go on to another agenda?
Trustee Blake?
I would very much like to have it on another agenda so that it can be clearly defined for the staff.
Next.
I was just gonna mention procedurally.
Okay, go ahead.
Typically, the board does on their regular meetings have that topic area at the end of the meeting where you talk about topics that you want and you have consensus. So that is the process. The next regular meeting, I would recommend that that be added as a topic.
Trustee Henley?
I would suggest if it's brought up as a topic, it should be limited to the implementation date only and not rehashed as to whether we're going to do it or not.
Director?
I would really appreciate having the opportunity to consult with legal counsel on this because there's been so many allegations that this is based on either religion or based on racial motivation. And as I've just said, there is potentially a financial impact on staff. It could be something that could jeopardize the entity. And so I would recommend that we talk to legal counsel and that we allow legal counsel to present if that's appropriate. So I would not recommend limiting the topic or the discussion so narrowly.
So are we done with that topic then? Okay, I would, Trustee Henley?
I move to the adjourn.
Has been moved that we adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it is unanimous and we are now adjourned. Thank you.